Today, a poll came out showing that 1 in 3 leftists say that physical violence is necessary to effect social change. Do you think that the nation can come back from this level of hatred the political left has for conservatives?
We must. Whatever is necessary is always possible. So do I believe it's possible? I do.
Yeah.
But do we have work cut out for us ahead? Absolutely. The normalization of political violence is un-American in this country. It's unacceptable. And I think that one of the things I've noticed is no one on the right is going to manage to convince someone on the left, just as somebody on the left is probably going to have a hard time convincing someone on the right of the same thing although I personally believe the numbers are asymmetric in one direction. So what we're going to need is actually leaders with a spine on the left, who we disagree with deeply, to still stand up and say that no matter what you think, words, and this is one of the sins of the woke movement, the idea that words are violence. That's where a lot of this began, right? That intellectual slippage between words, the free debate and challenge in the marketplace of ideas. That idea, you would hear it a few years ago, that words are violence, that I am harmed, that microaggression is the equivalent of physical harm to me. That crossed an American boundary into something anti-American. The idea, if you turn words into violence, then I guess somebody could think violence is justified in response. We on the left and right have to be united that words are not violence, violence is violence, and violence is never, ever, never, ever in the United States of America an acceptable response to words, period. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so my question is that over the past year prior to his assassination, Charlie Kirk became increasingly against legal immigration. And I know over Christmas you had defended it on Twitter numerous times. I'm wondering if you've changed your view at all in talking to Charlie about this. I've worked myself in an immigration office for a number of years and have very much become against a lot of the legal immigration we see. So I'm curious if your views have changed on that.
I would say my views have been pretty consistent over time, and they're consistent with what I reflected in my speech, which let's start with where we need to begin. I think, based on your question, I assume we would find alignment here, but I hope we do. We have double-digit numbers of millions of people who entered the country illegally. And my view is if you entered the country illegally, it is perfectly just for you to be returned to your country of origin. We haven't done that. So
I agree.
Let's
do that first. Focus on that first. But
and that would constitute something where we have still 10+ million numbers to go before we get to that question. Now, the separate question is, what should the legal immigration policy of the United States look like? Is the legal immigration policy of the United States right now serving the best interests of our country?
No.
I think the answer to that question is no. I agree with you. So what I favor and have long favored, and we got to have the courage to actually just stop bucking to, the last person who complained in your ear to actually speak truth, is we need a legal immigration system that accomplishes one thing. Does it serve the interests of the United States citizens who are already here? That should be the sole purpose. Now the question is, we may disagree on exactly how we do it, but at least we're aligned on the goal. The goal of U.S. immigration policy is to serve the Americans who already reside here. Then we have a question of what a merit-based system looks like. Now, the White House took some steps recently to say that, people should have to pay more to be able to actually hire someone from another country. I think that's actually a reasonable approach. If somebody's asked to put their money where their mouth is, that's a reasonable approach for framing the question of how we think about legal immigration to the United States. But I think that is a tough question. We're going to have to roll up our sleeves and actually ask the question, what best advances the interests of the citizens who are already here? And a precondition for even having that debate is actually to have ended the illegal immigration crisis in this country that we can't just sweep under the rug to punt for this other complicated question ahead of us. That's where I land on the question. So thank you for your input.
Thank you.
Appreciate it, man.
So in my opinion, the mental health crisis in America is the biggest threat to the future of society, and the numbers speak for themselves. As in the past 20 years, the reported depression and anxiety rates have gone from 8% to 20%. It feels like the scale of this mental health issue is overlooked and frankly being abused, whether that is through social media ecospheres and algorithms, within school systems, or promotion of radical left agendas such as transgenderism. So how will people realize this massive issue that affects all of us right now, and what should we do about it?
Look, it's an epidemic in our country. Depression, anxiety, fentanyl, suicide. all spreading like wildfire. And it's not an accident that happened over the same period that we see the rise of psychological and political poisons. Wokeism, transgenderism, climatism, COVIDism. These are symptoms, in my view, of a deeper void of purpose and meaning in our country, particularly amongst young people. I'm not young compared to you guys, but in my generation, millennials, we see it. In your generation, Gen Z, we see it. You have to fill that void with the real thing. So here's what I don't think is going to work. I don't think just symptomatic whack-a-mole is going to work. I think we have to fill that void, that black hole, with the real thing, with a vision of American national identity that runs so deep that it dilutes the poison to irrelevance, with the self-confidence that comes from having two parents in the home, in a stable nuclear family that gives a kid the foundation to believe they can jump higher when they do so from a stable foundation. The revival of faith in our country, mediated not through the government, but through our culture. Something that Charlie Kirk, I know, was very focused on as well, filling that vacuum in the heart of every person. It was actually a French scientist who once said that, it's Blaise Pascal, who said, if you have a void a hole the size of God in your heart and God doesn't fill it, something else will instead. And so the way I look at it is faith, family, patriotism, start with just pick two. Okay, it can't be zero. That's where we're beginning. Now, where can public leaders, such as in government, make a difference? I think our schools are a good opportunity to start. Early detection in schools is a big opportunity. Use an education system that revives the self-confidence of our young people. Bring back physical education at a young age. Bring back the presidential fitness test, PE as early as kindergarten. Physical health and mental health are two sides of the same coin. Serve healthier food in the cafeterias. Revive civic education even in high school. I personally think we do that with some standards. I think every high school senior who graduates from a high school in this country should have to pass the same civics test that, frankly, every immigrant has to pass before that immigrant becomes a voting citizen. You got to know something about your country, to be proud of your country, to be proud of yourself. But I want to give you credit for putting your finger on the pulse of something that knows no partisan boundary. If you look at the numbers, it knows no demographic or partisan boundary. And we really want to fix the country. We're going to fill that vacuum in the heart of a generation. It's the job of leaders like myself, governors like those of us who are here, and leaders at every level, high and low, including the household, to play their role in stepping up and reviving that missing sense of purpose in our country. And if we do that, I think the peak of this mental health epidemic will be behind us.
Thank you.
Thank you, my man. Appreciate it.
Where can I start off where I could carry Charlie's legacy in Kalispell?
Say that again. I just want to hear
I'm
the
trying
question.
to carry Charlie's legacy in Kalispell, but I'm wondering where I could start and what are your tips for me?
Sure. The first tip is, and Charlie embodied this better than probably anybody I know, when you are the only person in a room, say it's in your high school, say it's in a club you're a part of, say later it's an organization you join, when you're the only person in a room who believes what you do, you have an obligation to your country to stand up and say it. Say it with a spine. Say it with conviction. Say it with respect. And I think that that's one of the things, if you think about carrying on Charlie Kirk's legacy. I did so many of these events in college campuses across the country with him last year. We went to the University of Pittsburgh, we went to Georgia State, we went to University of North Carolina, others. And one of the things he would always say, and I enjoyed this, right? We're a good pair in this sense, is when somebody would come up to the mic, and even if it happens tonight, we'll say the same thing. It could be somebody, it's a predominantly conservative room, if I'm reading it correctly, but somebody from the left comes up. We don't sneer at them. We let them ask their question, and then we're going to address it directly head on. But we may say that the other side doesn't extend us that courtesy and response, and that's probably right. But we don't hold ourselves to their standards. We hold ourselves to our own standards. And if you want to carry on my friend's legacy, our friend's legacy, that's what you do. Hold yourself to your standards regardless of what the other side does. That's my best advice to you.
I think a big problem with the radical left and at the core of a lot of the culture issues we have today is truly a spiritual problem, one where we've lost many core facets for spiritual life, some of which include discernment, critical inquiry, and contemplative study. And in my opinion, people have therefore supplanted the self in place of God. They've lost a core of their belief system, and in the center of it, again, they've put themselves. I think this is such a deep wounding, and it's my thesis that having a God at the center doesn't necessarily make you a conservative, but we know that a strong theology breeds a good political life. And so I'm wondering, as an average person in our everyday lives, how you think we can help heal such a challenging wound. And do you see political leadership as an extension of spiritual leadership?
I actually see both of them going hand in glove together in reviving a great country. I don't think you're going to save the country exclusively through politics. I think the revival of our culture and conviction of purpose and self-confidence, the full answer to that mental health epidemic we discussed earlier, is going to require a kind of spiritual revival in the country. I personally don't believe that that's limited to any one particular faith, but I believe that when we have more people of true faith in the country, that's a good thing that makes us stronger rather than weaker. And our job as leaders in the civic sphere of our lives isn't to create the environment for forcing that on anybody, because it doesn't work, but instead to at least speak to it and its importance, and that's something I'm committed to doing. So thank you very much, all right? I appreciate that question. Thank you.